Hey guys, welcome to the Heart of David. Hope you guys are doing well today. What if you knew you had a story and that story was about yourself, and the details of that story were so great, but you couldn't tell them? You want to tell them, but you're too ashamed to tell them because of the nature of it. If you've been watching me for some amount of time, you probably already know. You just have to look back in my videos, not too far back. Well, actually, it is far back, and I will leave a link in this, but you know what? One of the biggest... You know what? I was an addict. I was a polysubstance abuser. And I got into that early, and I had a hard life. I just did. I had a hard life. Through drugs and alcohol and suicide and led into pain. A lot of pain. But God brought me out through all of it in ways that I don't know. I asked God, how do I tell this story? I'm not going to retell this story, but I will leave a link. Just like the story of David, God brought David through it all. And I'm so grateful to be here and alive. And this isn't what I sounded like 4 years ago. This isn't what I sounded like 4 years ago, because of the nature of my pain disorders, and I didn't know what they were, and they turned out to be some of the most horrible things, man. When I was younger, I got into things I just should have never got into. It was a time without the internet and stuff, and I'm not making this whole video about this. I got into drugs and got into LSD and ecstasy and cocaine, and not a lot of those hard drugs, but got into those things, developed trauma, and things get so out of control. And, I make it no secret that I have autism, and I have associated mental health disorders too. I do my best, and I think I'm doing well. And all those things are under control. But when you're into substance abuse and polysubstance abuse, your whole personality changes. You're not the same person. And you can see that when a person comes off of something. They may call you this and this and this, but you can't tell until you take away those things to see what mannerisms and the way that person is. And you may manipulate, you may lie and cheat and steal and do all those things. That's the nature of addiction. And those were the types of things that I was doing, and I hated it. I hated my own self because of addiction and withdrawals and all that. In my early life, I tried to take my life on a number of very serious occasions, and God brought me out through all of them. And then when I developed pain, the pain-suicide diseases, and no one could give me answers to all the things I was suffering with, it felt like torture. Year after year, people weren't telling me what it was, because they were the more difficult disorders to diagnose, and half of people were never getting a diagnosis for this type of pain. I couldn't handle it, and I went along that line of trying to take my life, and my life got to such a point where I ended up with so many injuries on my body because of the pains that I was suffering with, and man, it just kept escalating and escalating. And then when I count in the things of my life that God saved me out of, just like not to do with those things, like being at work and being electrocuted by an industrial freezer with a metal brush, walking across the road in a busy artery of downtown Ottawa, being struck by a Chevy Silverado at 50 kilometers an hour, walk right in front of it. There are just so many things, you know. Lord, how do I tell this story without trying to exalt my own self? And the only thing I can tell you is to watch the links watch part 1 to 4, and you'll understand what I'm talking about. Lord, how do I say that I don't believe the listener will hear another story like this? Go listen to it. You know, this is how I walk around in my life. I feel so, you know, like, I just want to tell people what God has done. He took me from the grave. He took me from hell. God took me. He didn't want me to go to hell. And it didn't matter what I did to myself to bring myself out of this misery, which were many. There were at least 8 significant times where I should have died, where the chances were against me. There were so many of them, and man, you know, it's hard to. I'm writing it up right now. I'm writing it up, and you know, I put my own personal story on the line when, you know, I'm trying to become an addictions counselor and be a support worker, and I know people can see this, but I want to give the glory to God. If you go listen to my video of what he did, what he took me out of, I think you already know God can do anything, but I don't think you'll hear a story like this. Go listen to it. And I have these memories, and I when I look at what's happening in the world right now, I'm like, holy, like, you brought me because you knew what time it was. You knew what time it was, God, and you didn't want me to see hell. You didn't want me to see hell. Just give me a second. How do you be a humble Christian and say, you probably haven't heard a story like this before? Right? But I want to come along that way. And I don't mention this often. But there are times when I think, man, it's God that deserves the glory. And that's why I will not go through the story again. I'll just leave it in the links. Man. I'm trying to think of how I want to say this. It's almost been 7 years now that I've been living here. It'll be on September 1st, it will be 7 years exactly. And if you saw my last videos and you understand by what the Essenes predicted, what the Apophis rock, if you believe that's going to strike the earth, it sure looks like trumpet 1, 2, and 3. I believe in my heart it is. It's too coincidental. I see the Antichrist here. His name is Donald Trump. They're about to split the land. It's here. People are looking for the Antichrist. In any case, God pulled me out of all. It didn't matter what I did. I could go run and jump off a cliff right now. God will keep me alive somehow. He will. And no, I'm not suicidal. I haven't been that way in a long time. And the only reason I was because my pain is such a level. It'll be 7 years on September 1st. That's a magical number to me, and probably to you too. I was brought through a fire from the day I walked into this building. where I had to become a new person. I couldn't even walk, man. I walked slower than people who were walking around here with canes and walkers. One day a person passed me with their walker. That was like 80 years old. You know, like those were just things I was used to. I get comments every now and again from people around here saying, well, you know, we don't even recognize you anymore. And I know it's God, but 7 years. There's no way for you to know all my story. And there's certain things I don't like telling people because I don't want to say God said and this and that. This is when I was speaking to this narcissistic woman. You know, we had some type of relationship. And I spoke to her on the phone a lot. And it wasn't even just speaking to her, it's other people. I can't go into detail, but on my phone, all of a sudden, it would just shut off. It like mid-conversation, and then it would make a strange beeping sound 3 times, and a number would come up. The number that never comes up on this. I looked, I went through everything, I researched it. I believe they were Bible numbers. And then the phone would shut off again, and then it would come back up to a dial tone. Very strange stuff. I knew that it was God based on me looking up what verses they were. And one of them, it happened I think 6 or 9 times. I just, you know, I recorded some of them. It was, wake up from your sleep. Your salvation is nearer than once first believed. I remember crying to that. God has ways of showing you all types of things. That's what happened to me. And every new time I would copy it down, but I don't know where I put those, and it doesn't matter now. It was really strange. It was I was dealing with something very stressful, and a specific verse would come up that pertained to what I was going through in that very moment. And I knew it was God. It doesn't matter. It led me closer to God, and here I am. I don't know how to explain that. So, 7 years. If truly the end of this grace, and you count backwards from Apophis, just April 13th, 2029, we know it's close based on Christ's timeline, that if the tribulation begins at that time based on Apophis, it would be 7 years exactly from the time that I started to become a new person. Being on my own, but in a horrible state, man. You have to be me to understand the numerical significance. 7 years exactly. Your salvation is nearer than once first believed. It's 133, right when I'm saying that. You know what I said in my other videos. I'm not a new number guy, okay? Look at, bam, 133. You've seen my other videos. I'm not even going to go into that. Don't think I'm the type of person who does that, goes into angel numbers and those types of things. It's only the number 3. I love God so much, man. What he pulled me out of the most impossible things to get out of. Like sure death. It's worth hearing anyways. You may want to turn away when you look at it though. But, you know, I didn't want to make this all about this. Glory to God for pulling me out of death. You know, I guess that's what I have to say about that part. What if you had All of those, I consider each one of them miracles, and some really big. How can I go along and when I'm around a believer, not just want to scream it out? Or you go a certain amount of period of time and you know what he did. Yes, you can keep it personal, but through the body of Christ, it glorifies God to tell these things. Please watch it. So, when you come closer to the truth and listen, you see what's happening in the world, you see all the things that are happening. Our world is breaking apart, literally. Did you see is it the Rift Valley in Africa? It's splitting apart, man. It's creating a new waterway. There are volcanoes. I think they said there were 8 volcanoes just in 1 week that have awoken. So many things, heat waves, floods, and wars, and do you see the stuff that's going on in Europe with the Islam and all that? In Spain right now, they're like literally fighting the people. They're beating people up, and countries are rising up against it, and this is what they want. They want a war. It's the elites. They want a war. I don't know. Somehow they make money out of it, right? They make money out of everything. And you know what? Even in the worst of things, that's why it says in the book of Revelation, but don't harm the oil and the wine. Even though a nuke is flying and hit a country, they still have their mind is so seared that they're still like, oh man, everyone's dying around me, but keep that going. That's what they're like. That's exactly what they're like. Keep the money flowing. That's how evil it is, and that's why God, like the days of Noah, his thoughts are like this. Their debased minds are evil continually. It's the same thing. Is there anything that they're not going to be able to do? So when I revealed those 2 videos I did yesterday, Apophis, and then I think I did Apophis again, the Essenes. So the Essenes, as I read to you, they were a sect of Judaism that broke off from the Pharisees and the Sadducees because of, like it is now, a dead church. They weren't in the truth. And, the Greek Empire, all the, all their belief systems, and, they'll believe in Eastern religions, and this just like it is now. It happened. So they broke off and they went to the desert, and they followed religiously, just like born-again Christians do now. And I believe their prophecy because they got so many other things right. And that's why I say it's going to be September of this year. You can see the things happening, and the flood in Texas, the second one in the exact same place, 27 feet. Do you know yesterday there was a place that I just read, there was another place on top of all these other ones, there was 10 inches of rain in, oh man, what was it, just a couple hours. 10 inches. These are new norms. And I believe, as Jamie Walden said, that they're turning off the sharing data. There are many good channels out there that use the satellite data, and they're not going to be able to use it anymore. And even experts are saying this is going to slow down progress of learning, like advancements and stuff. But they know what's coming. They know what's coming. That flood was very unnatural, the second one, saying they cannot account for where all that rain came from. Where did it all come from? They don't know. I could say it was a rainstorm, but not that much. 27 feet. It went up 27 feet. 27 feet. So, when you're getting into the truth and you're telling people this stuff, bam, evil hits you. I went to sleep last night. I haven't had a sleep paralysis attack in maybe 3 months. Okay? I haven't had one in a long time for me. All of a sudden I found myself, you know, when you have a sleep paralysis, they're violent. They can be violent. They can be abusive sexually. They can be violent, trying to smother you. And so there are different variations that can happen, and you can also be mixed. You can be abused by them. You can see them face to face. You see demons in it. It was only once that I saw one face to face. They're trying to smother you. You may be just stuck in place and you feel like something's in the room. But there's also another one, they can sexually abuse you, and then the other one is floating. Okay, you feel like you're floating, you're flying. That's for me that's doesn't happen that often, but it did this night. This morning. It's like 1:41 right now. So it happened in around 4 o'clock in the morning. So all of a sudden, I'm in a dark room in a basement somewhere. You know, when you're in this, things kind of feel familiar. And it was a wide open basement, and there was a window on the far left side, and it was a pretty big window, but it was higher up. And across the room there was, you know, you can't explain things very well. There were like old cabinets, and there may have even been weapons or guns in them, I don't know. And I just remember going from one side of the room and floating and flying over to the other side. I don't know how to explain what happened, but I do know this. I was flying around in that room, in a dark room, and I felt great evil come over me, and a heaviness, a very, you know, a really severe heaviness. Why? Because it went from floating to smothering. And it was smothering me so hard, and it felt so violent, like you feel the violence of it. And you're trying to get up. You feel like you're being buried alive. And as I'm trying to push it's like you're buried under the dirt and you're trying to get up, right? And all of a sudden, as I'm trying to do it, I see hands, and they're like demonic hands. And it's as I'm trying to push my way up, I get through one, and then there's another hand and another hand on top of each other. That's what I imagine hell would be like. They're burying you, and you're trying to get up, and there's just more and more hands pushing you down. It was frightening, like. But then you know, when you're stuck in these things, you don't know what to do. You don't know where you are, and you forget things. But this time, I didn't. I said, Jesus Christ, but I could barely get it out of my mouth. And I repeated it 4 times, and then bam, I was up. And I realized where I was. It was around 4 o'clock in the morning. And I suffer with narcolepsy, just in case you didn't know. I can sleep through a very loud alarm for an hour, and that happens quite often. And so I felt so tired that I remember saying in my mind, go back to see if you can go in it. That's just the way I am. I wanted to know if I could go back in it and pull myself out. That's just me. Instantly, because I was so tired, I just went back, started again, pulled myself out of it, and then I got up. I got up, and it was the most violent one I had. Most violent one I've ever had. And as I got up, I stood up, and I walked around here. I wrote it down because I didn't want to forget anything. And there's not much to remember. And I remember saying, but I am saved by the blood of the Lamb. That's what I said. You can't have me. It's a lot to take in, isn't it? I do believe in September or October, something is going to change. I don't predict things, I don't say, I just go upon what writings that are already there. I go with what the Essene said. September, the age of grace is over. I don't know what's going to happen. We're going to see what's going to happen. And in the meanwhile, we can just look and see the things that are happening anyways. What's going to happen today? Remember I said that. What's going to happen today? There's an earthquake There was an earthquake yesterday in Spain, pretty big one. There's a volcano that's erupted in, is it Somalia, I think? You know, just things, they're awakening all over the world. But people are so dense in their brain, they can't take it in. When you tell them it's Jesus, yeah, they don't listen. Let's read some Isaiah. Let's listen to this. Very, very interesting. And when I was watching Jamie Walden,